The garden of second old, but she could feel its cruelty. Sold like property by her stepmother to a cold-hearted millionaire, the blind girl had no idea her darkest night would unlock a secret. That would change everything. The morning. Light filtered through the old curtains of the small apartment, casting gentle shadows across Emma's face as she sat by the window. At 19, she had learned to navigate the world through sounds, scents, and the delicate touch of her fingertips. The chirping of sparrows outside had become her morning alarm, and today, like every day, she listened to their cheerful songs while her stepmother, Margaret, moved about the kitchen with deliberate, heavy steps. Emma had been blind since birth, but she had never considered it a limitation. Her world was rich with textures and melodies that others often overlooked. She could identify people by the sound of their breathing, distinguish between different types of rain by their rhythm against the roof, and find peace in the simple act of running her hands through her small collection of books written in Braille. Emma. Margaret's voice cut through the morning calm, sharp and businesslike. "We need to talk." Emma turned toward the sound, her hands instinctively smoothing the worn fabric of her favorite dress. She had learned to read the tension in Margaret's voice over the years since her father had passed away. Today, that tension felt different. Heavier. "I've made arrangements for you," Margaret continued, her footsteps approaching the small table where Emma sat. "There's a man, very wealthy, very successful. He's agreed to take you in, provide for you properly. Better than I ever could." The words hung in the air like storm clouds gathering before a downpour. Emma's chest tightened, and she gripped the edge of the table. "What do you mean, take me in?" "Mr. Alexander Reed. He owns several companies in the city. His driver will come for you this afternoon." Margaret's voice carried no warmth, no regret. It was a transaction being discussed, nothing more. Emma felt the familiar sting of abandonment that had haunted her since childhood. First her mother, who had died when Emma was too young to remember her face. Then her father, taken by illness when she was 16. And now Margaret, the woman who had promised her father she would care for Emma, was passing her along like an unwanted burden. The afternoon arrived too quickly. Emma sat on the edge of her narrow bed, her few possessions packed in a small suitcase. She had memorized every corner of this room, every creak of the floorboards, every way the light changed throughout the day based on the warmth she felt on her skin. Now she was leaving it all behind for the unknown. The car that came for her was unlike anything she had experienced. The leather seats were soft beneath her hands, and the engine purred with quiet power. The driver, a kind man named Thomas, spoke to her gently, describing the passing scenery as they drove through the city toward the wealthy district she had only heard about in stories. "The house is quite beautiful." "Miss," Thomas said, as they turned through what sounded like iron gates, "Mr. Reed has extensive gardens. I think you might enjoy them." When the car stopped, Emma heard Thomas come around to help her out. Her legs felt unsteady as she stood on unfamiliar ground. The air here smelled different. Cleaner, mixed with the scent of roses and something else she couldn't identify. "Welcome, Emma." The voice was deep, measured, but not unkind. Emma turned toward it, her heart racing with uncertainty. "I'm Alexander." "Reed," the voice continued. "I know this must be overwhelming for you. Would you like Thomas to show you to your room, or would you prefer to sit in the garden for a while first?" Emma was surprised by the choice being offered to her. In Margaret's house, choices had been rare. "The garden, please," she said quietly. Alexander guided her along a stone path, his footsteps steady beside hers. "There's a bench here, surrounded by lavender," he said, gently helping her sit. "The afternoon sun hits this spot perfectly." As Emma settled onto the bench, she felt the warmth he had described on her face. The scent of lavender was indeed all around her, mixed with the distant fragrance of other flowers she couldn't name. For the first time in months, some of the tension in her shoulders began to ease. May I ask you something? Alexander's voice came from nearby, probably from another bench. Emma nodded. What do you enjoy doing? What brings you happiness? The question caught her off guard. When was the last time someone had asked her that? I like to read, she said. Braille books. And I like to listen to music. Classical mostly. And I enjoy cooking, when I'm allowed to. When you're allowed to? Emma's cheeks flushed. Margaret said I would only make a mess, being blind and all. There was a long pause. When Alexander spoke again, his voice had changed, become softer somehow. Emma, I want you to know something. You're not here as a burden or an obligation. My own daughter. She would have been about your age now. She passed away 3 years ago in an accident. Emma felt her breath catch. She was also blind, Alexander continued, and she was the most capable, brilliant person I ever knew. When Margaret contacted me about your situation, I saw an opportunity to honor her memory by providing you with the kind of life she would have wanted for someone like you. Not out of pity, but out of respect. The weight of his words settled over Emma like a warm blanket. This wasn't the transaction she had feared. This was something else entirely. Would you like to see your room now? Alexander asked. It has a piano in it. Sarah loved to play. Emma nodded, feeling tears she hadn't expected sliding down her cheeks. As they walked back toward the house, Alexander described the path they were taking, the various flowers they passed, the fountain in the center of the garden. His voice painted pictures that her eyes couldn't see, but her heart could feel. There's something else, Alexander said as they reached the front door. I'd like you to consider this your home, not just a place you're staying. That means making decisions about your own life, pursuing your interests, maybe even continuing your education if that's something you'd like. Emma stopped walking. You mean I have choices here? You have all the choices, Emma. This is your life to live. That night, as Emma lay in a bed more comfortable than any she had known, in a room that smelled of fresh flowers and possibility, she listened to the sounds of her new world. Different birds sang outside these windows. The house settled with different creaks and sighs. But for the first time in years, Emma felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. In the weeks that followed, Emma discovered that Alexander had been true to his word. She spent her mornings in the garden, learning the layout of paths and flower beds. She spent her afternoons at the piano, her fingers rediscovering melodies she had thought were lost forever. And she spent her evenings in the library, exploring books that Alexander read aloud to her when her fingers grew tired of Braille. What had begun as an abandonment had become a rescue, not from her blindness, which had never been the true problem, but from a world that had seen her as less than whole. Here, in Alexander's house, surrounded by gardens and kindness, Emma began to bloom like the flowers she tended each day. She had found her place in the world at last,